Hi, I'm Victoria. I am a Toronto sports content creator, and you are listening to Red, White, and Blue Jays.
Swing and a drive.
Welcome to Red, White, and Blue Jays, the podcast home of Blue Jays Fans UK, a group connecting Blue Jays fans around the UK and beyond, and telling their story. And now, here's the host of Red, White, and Blue Jays, Steve Hunter.
Hi guys, welcome to another edition of Red, White and Blue Jays. Tonight is my episode 39. It's been a fantastic year. I've loved doing every episode. Going to take a little bit of a break over the winter period now that the Jays are into the off season. But I couldn't think of anybody better that I wanted on the pod, and I've been trying to get hold of her for a little while. So a very, very warm welcome to Victoria Stewart. It's great to have you, Victoria. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm great, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Finally got to this.
Yeah, it's been. I can't remember when I first asked you. It was a little while ago, I know, but the reason that you are our perfect guest for tonight is obviously everybody knows you for your love of the Leafs, and so it's a perfect segue from out of baseball season into hockey season, and so I'm hoping you're going to help us bridge that gap tonight.
Yes, I think that's definitely what I'm known for. Baseball's very new to me, but I've enjoyed this season. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a nice end to your podcast season.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. In terms of, I mean, you mentioned the baseball there. We'll come back to it in a bit more detail. Have you got over the disappointment of the weekend? How's the emotions? Because obviously being a Toronto sports fan is sometimes a painful ride. How are your emotions after Sunday?
They're not great. Obviously the Leafs not getting their great start to the season just added on to what the Jays had already given me in terms of emotions last weekend. I still can't believe what I watched. I'm still a little bit shocked, but it's wearing off a little bit now, and I'm starting to actually just miss the Jays instead.
Yeah, which is a great place to be, isn't it? I think my emotions have, they were a bit in tatters after the first game. We were just beaten by a better team on the day. The Mariners did play better, but the second game was such a brutal turnaround, and we'll unpack that a little bit in a moment. Let's find out a little bit about you first, because I'm intrigued to know. I know a little bit of your story because I've obviously watched a bit of the stuff that you put out, and I'm just trying to work out which order things came in first for you. So out of hockey, social media, Toronto, what's the order of play for you?
So I would say hockey itself came first because I started watching the Dundee Stars in like 2016. So that came first. Then I decided to branch out into the NHL and I found the Leafs. So that came second. And then I started sort of tweeting out I already had like some followers on Twitter, but nothing like what I have now. And it certainly wasn't full of hockey fans. So I was kind of tweeting out into the oblivion about Leafs games in the middle of the night. Nobody cared until like a few tweets got picked up, and then suddenly people actually started to follow me. But I would say that's probably the order. I've always been very into social media. Even before social media was a thing, as a child, I was always the child that was walking around with my parents' video camera, taking videos of stuff. And that was before any social media existed. So I've always been very into content and very content focused. So I don't think it's surprising what I do now. But yeah, that's the general order.
Okay. So in terms of hockey in Scotland, because there may be a lot of people who are actually not that familiar with the hockey scene, particularly in the UK. What's the level like there? But what sort of standard are the teams at?
So there's like professional league. There's also a couple of tiers below that, but if we just kind of stick to the professional league, you've got the Elite Ice Hockey League, which, although professional, it's not comparable to the likes of the NHL or even the AHL. And there's even some places in Europe that I would say are probably at a higher standard than we are. But it's good level of hockey. There's a good mix of Brits combined with imports, and you get some really good games. It's definitely an underrated league, and it's something that I would like more people to know about, definitely. But yeah, I'm very proud of like my country in general. So it's nice that we've got hockey over here too to enjoy.
Yeah, brilliant. And did you ever play as you know as you were growing up? Were you out on the rink at all?
Absolutely not. I was like quite a sporty child, but very much I played netball, I played field hockey, and like I was like a dancer. I
Okay.
never took ice when I was a child. No.
Any temptation to start now?
Play hockey? No.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, I just like watching.
What about curling? You play curling?
Never
Oh,
played.
wow.
I would like to. I'd like to have a shot at that.
Yeah, that sort of feels like a slightly safer entry
Yeah.
into ice sports. Love
Yeah.
curling. Yeah, it's very popular, particularly obviously when the Winter Olympics come along. Everybody
Mm.
watches curling, and then it sort of disappears for 40. Well, it does in our part of the world anyway. It disappears for
Yeah.
40 years.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then Eve Muirhead comes around again. There she
Yeah.
is, but not this time now. She's retired. But
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastic. So where did the drip over into the NHL and particularly the Leafs story then? Excuse me. Why the Leafs as opposed to one of the other NHL teams?
I don't have the best answer for this. I downloaded the NHL app one night. I think I'd come back from a game here, and I knew like the NHL existed, so I downloaded the app. And there was something about the Maple Leafs that just stuck out to me straight away. It was the first team that stuck out. I wasn't one of those people that jumped around a few teams or anything. Pretty much since I started watching the NHL, I've been a Leafs fan. It just popped out to me. I do have some family over in Ontario. Toronto
Okay.
is somewhere I wanted to visit. However, weirdly enough, when I was younger, my obsession's always been New York. Like New York was the city I was always obsessed with. So it doesn't really make sense to me why I didn't pick, like the Rangers or something instead. But for some reason, Toronto was the one that stuck out to me. So I don't have a better answer than that. I wish I did, but
That's
that's
all
what
right.
happened.
Well, I think particularly in your formative growing up years, it's hard to shift once your heart connects with something,
Mhm.
particularly in terms of a sports franchise. They become the team, don't they, for you? And
Yeah.
I've got stuff up here which is above the camera you can't see of Liverpool, and my growing up as a young lad, Liverpool were flying high, and my heart connection was with them, and
Yeah.
has been forevermore. How many games have I seen? Well, a handful, but not regular by any means. And I think when you fall in love with a sports team, whatever the journey is to that point, they're always your team.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah. So bit of a painful journey though, because I mean, well, you'll know all about the history about the Leafs now, which you perhaps didn't know when you picked them. How, yeah, where do you feel with all of that? Because, original six team, was it 1967? Am I right in my stats there in
Yeah.
terms of the last Stanley Cup?
Yeah. I studied history at undergrad. I do marketing now, but I did history. So history and sports history included is something that like really interests me. So that was one of the first things after I picked Toronto that I went and looked into. And obviously the outcomes were not the best by any means, but you know what? I would still rather have a club that's got such a rich history, being an original six team and everything. I still find that aspect really interesting. And there's been so many chapters of Leafs history that I absolutely love it. But unfortunately, most of it hasn't been winning chapters, which
Sure.
you're forever on the end of like chirps and people making fun of you. But you know what, it's okay. I still would have the same teams, and they could never win anything in my lifetime, which is perfectly possible, you know. Same goes for any of my sports teams. I could spend the rest of my life not seeing them win anything, and they would still be my sports team.
Yeah.
I couldn't be one of those people that ever gives up on them just because they don't win. I couldn't see that happening. So as much as it's heartbreaking, it just is what it is, and I just try and enjoy it there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's being a sports fan, isn't it? That's getting behind your team through thick and thin.
Yeah.
Win, lose, or draw. Well, I don't do draws, of course, but you know, metaphorically, win, lose, or draw, you're there and you're supporting them.
Yeah.
I mean, because I know you've got a trip lined up, haven't you, to Toronto later this year? Your first time to the city.
Yes.
How exciting is that?
It is very, very exciting. I didn't think I was going to get to go until at least till I finished university. I didn't think that was going to happen. So, like, a couple of opportunities came up, and I just honestly, it's next month, and I still have so much to organise in terms of it because there's so much going on right now. But I'm very excited nonetheless. I can't wait to go. I've been wanting to go for so long. I honestly think I'll cry when I get to Scotiabank. I think I'll be sitting in the rink in tears. So anyone sees me crying in the rink, just please.
That's brilliant. How many games are you getting to see while you're there?
I'm not entirely sure because I don't actually know how many days I'm staying there for yet, but I've got at least one lined up. I'm definitely the Islanders game. So.
Oh, nice. It's funny. We went to. I mean, I've been to Toronto several times, and on one of our trips, we tried to go and see the Leafs play, and quite frankly, with the family, the tickets were so expensive, and really hard to get hold of. I mean, you know, and we've got 4 children, so there was 6 of us all together, and trying to get 6 tickets to see the Leafs play was just never going to happen. But we did on that trip. We went from Toronto across to Boston, and then down to New York and home. And it was a great little road trip. But when we were in Boston, we got to see the Bruins against the Islanders. So, which was great because I wanted to experience the NHL experience, and we managed to get a family ticket at the Bruins, and it's brilliant. Such an exciting sport, and it's a shame that we don't see more of it here. Because it's so fast and it's all action, isn't it? I mean, it's completely different to baseball in terms of dynamic.
They are complete opposites, the two sports, but that almost makes them complement each other because you've got 2 completely different sort of energies going on there. But I think it's good to have contrast, and they definitely have that. Yeah,
fantastic. So, other plans in Toronto when you get there? Presumably, you're going to have a little look at Rogers Centre as well as you. I mean, they're I don't know, about 400 yards apart from each other, so they're not, you know, it's not
exactly. I'm very excited to just even go past there. I love taking photos and videos of stuff, so I know that I'm going to have so much storage just filled with Toronto content. I know that already. I'm just so excited to see everything. I don't have too many. I've got a few things like solidly planned, but as I said, considering it's only I think 6 weeks away, I should be more organized than what I am right now, put it that way.
Well, if you want some tips of things to look at, go to, you know, just give us a shout. There's just loads of things there. And you'll absolutely love it. It's a brilliant city. It's full of energy, full of life. I love every time I go back to Toronto. It's super. And you'll have a great time. How do you find the old night game shift for a UK supporter? What's your technique for managing watching the Leafs in the middle of the night?
It's really bad. It's shocking. I've made a sort of pledge to myself this year just because I'm doing my master's right now, so there's a lot more studying going on than what I was doing before, and I've sort of made a pact to myself that I'm not going to stay up for every single game just because I need to sleep. But I do, for the past like few years, very much you do a nap between maybe like 10 and like it's usually 12 face off. The 3 a.m.s are just something else. Don't even get me started.
In the West Coast,
just do not get me started when it's 3 a.m. It makes me want to cry. But when it's midnight, Yeah, it's sort of, you can get a couple hours nap in there. I did that last night, and then I sometimes sleep during the intermissions as well. But it's a risky game because you risk not waking up when you do that. It's I wouldn't recommend it. Like if you can pick a sport that's in your time zone better, I highly recommend. Like baseball was so refreshing to me because I would stay up for the occasional game, but there were so many early ones, especially on the weekends, that it made it easy for me to like keep up with the team. It's way easier to watch baseball than it is NHL in
Yeah.
this country. Definitely easier. But it's tough, and I wouldn't recommend. It's probably not great for your health either.
Oh, I see. It's funny because you do sort of get used to it. You wind up for the season as as it's coming around, and you start mentally, I think, preparing for,
Oh
okay,
yeah,
we're back into that mindset now.
yeah.
I think that the hard thing is, and last night's result for the Leafs, of course, they came away with a loss. It's that disappointment and close game again. Just pipped by a single goal. You stayed up all night for a loss to happen. I mean, that's always a hard one to swallow.
Oh yeah, that makes it worse. When they win, it's a lot easier to sort of know that you at least got to witness that live. Last night, results like that are so frustrating. I mean, there was 17, 18 seconds left in the game and we lost to that. That was really frustrating. I mean, it's Toronto sports, isn't it? Stuff happens, but
Uh,
it's not nice going to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, knowing stayed up just to watch your team embarrass themselves yet again. So
yeah,
yeah.
it is hard. But as we said, you stick with your guys, and
Oh,
they're your team. And even with the losses, as painful as it is, you're going to be there next time round, aren't you? Because
oh, 100%, yeah.
yeah. So tell me about your fascination with Mr. Matthews then.
Oh, where do I start? I mean, I used to have in my Twitter bio, I used to have Austin Matthews enthusiast in my Twitter bio, but I find people sometimes don't take you very seriously when they know that you're obsessed with a player because they sort of assume that, especially as like a girl watching sport, that you're only watching it for them, which is not true. If Austin does leave, I will still be as big of a Leafs fan, so that's not the case. However, he has been my favorite player since I started watching the Leafs. He was drafted at the same time I started watching hockey. Like it aligns up perfectly. So to me, like he is a big part of like my Toronto sports love. He was the first Toronto sports player that I ever was like obsessed with. I have 34 tattooed on my ankle. But also like I love Gosman, so the 34 thing worked out really well for me.
Great.
I love Austin Matthews so much. He's an incredible player. People try and like chirp him, but I don't understand how you're chirping someone that racks up goals like that, whose stats last look like that. I just can't get behind it. I adore that man.
And it was a massive moment for the Leafs, wasn't it, when he was drafted in?
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about this guy, and he's lived up to expectations.
Yeah, exactly. There's always that sort of risk. Even when you get like first round picks, there's a risk that they're not going to live up to what you're hoping they'll be. Whereas I feel like he has sort of surpassed everything that anyone could have expected. And he's still so young. That's the thing. He's probably not even reached his peak yet. He is still so young and he's got so much more to give. I mean, as long as he stays healthy this season, like who knows what he could end up with.
Sure.
It's like franchise history in the making, and you've always got those players in the past that everyone talks about now, and like Austin Matthews is going to be that 100 years from now, and I just think it's great that we get to witness somebody as great as him play.
Yeah, it is amazing. In terms of your heart for this season, I did a little bit of research in terms of what people were saying. And there seems to be some positive vibes around the Leafs this year. I think not so much in just that they're a good team, and I think they are a great team, but also that the fact that the competition isn't quite as strong as it potentially has been in the last few seasons. Are you sort of holding back, or are you feeling this is our year? Where are you?
I'm like an optimist. I am the biggest optimist ever. So every year I start off the season and I'm like, this is the year, we've got it this year. We're at least getting past the first round.
Sure.
Usually I don't fetch it to, oh, we're going to win the cup. I think almost Leafs fans want is just to get out the first round. So every year I'm determined that's going to happen. This year I feel exactly the same. We do have a very good team, of course, and we have a challenging division. Like sometimes results come from who you're matched up against, right? And our division is pretty tough, but especially the likes of like Florida and stuff, they're not as good this year at all. And even Tampa, I don't know, something's telling me Tampa aren't going to be quite as good this year. And obviously they are our biggest problem in the division. So that combined with the fact that I actually think we've upgraded in a lot of depth areas in our team, I think we really do stand a solid chance this year. And I know that watching the game last night, that what on doesn't add up to what I saw last night, but you can't base an entire season off of one game, you know,
Sure.
you just can't. But I will always be optimistic about them. I just don't see the point in making yourself miserable. Like sports are meant to be fun. You're meant to enjoy. Making yourself miserable and being pessimistic over them all the time isn't going to do anyone any good. So you might as well try your best to be optimistic as best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think certainly what they were saying on a couple of pods I was listening today, you know, you mentioned Tampa as being that nemesis there. They don't seem to be as strong. I think the other thing that was mentioned was just in terms of goaltending for the Leafs. That seems to be also a position perhaps could potentially be a little bit of a banana skin.
Yes, yeah, very much so. We've got the riskiest goaltending that I've seen in a while. Goaltending goes wrong for the Leafs. It's one area that every season just goes drastically wrong. And this year, it's definitely a risky tandem that we've got going. But last year, we still, until the first round, we still did really well in the regular season. And our goaltending stats were average when you look at them overall. We had some really good phases, but on like across the season, they were really like below average stats. I don't even think they were at average. I think they were below that. So if this year we could just stick to average stats, we'll be better than we were last year, and we were already good last year. So I'm optimistic. Matt Murray, I really like. I found out he's obviously got like Scottish like descent. He's descended from Dundee. I found out.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
I know.
That's amazing.
So immediately, I love that guy. I love him. I'm excited to see what he'll do. But you know, you've got to be proud of your own when people have got Scottish heritage, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I all in for all of that. I think
Yeah.
that again, that brings the connection, doesn't it? Particularly between you loving that sport and you have those connections. And it's amazing how many, and I don't mean this in any derogatory way, but it's amazing how connections there are between Canada and Scotland.
Yeah.
Just loads. I've known loads of Jays fans. We've got, I think 2 or 3 certainly at the moment, but people I know, they're coming over to Scotland, that's going to live in Scotland for a while. They've got Scottish heritage and all this sort of stuff. And it's just like, it's a much stronger connection than I had ever realized. You haven't got any connections, you know, back in your lines in terms of the 2 countries at all?
You know what? I would love to do sort of one of those DNA, you know, like where you send it away and then you find out where all like your were in the past. I would love to do one of those. That'd be fascinating. But I did a lot of Scottish Canadian history and I've studied like that quite a lot, and I'm fascinated by it. It's amazing how interlinked the 2 nations are.
Yeah.
And my boyfriend is Canadian, so
I was going to mention that at some point, yeah, but you've done it now.
So keeping that going strong, you know, Scottish Canadian relations.
Totally, absolutely. So where did you guys meet? At uni or?
He actually was studying, he was at medical school in Ireland, and obviously I'm just across here, so it's like there's a tiny bit of water in between. And he actually found me because of my Twitter. My Twitter stuff came up.
No way! I didn't know that story.
Yeah, so he was scrolling down Twitter one night. He was watching a Leafs game in the middle of the night, and I get this message off of this random like guy at like 1:30 in the morning, and he's just, oh hi, like, you're watching the Leafs from the same time zone as me. And then before we knew it, like, he came over and visited, and I've known him nearly a year now. He just moved back to Canada for work because his job's out there just now.
Okay.
But yeah, that's how we met. It's because of that.
I had no idea. I knew your boyfriend was Canadian. So look, we've got to give him a shout out. So what's his name?
It's Ryan.
Ryan. Okay. And what's Ryan's Twitter handle? So everybody can go and follow him as well as you.
It's at RB Golf Guy. Massive golf.
RB Golf Guy.
Yeah.
Okay. He obviously likes golf.
He is obsessed with golf. Yes.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, again, dating somebody from Scotland, perfect nation for golf. Absolutely. Exactly.
It's a running joke that he is only dating me because I'm right next to St Andrews. That is a running joke. I'm only dating him because he's right next to Toronto. So
that's brilliant. I love that story. That's made my day. That's brilliant. Okay, let's I want to just sort of dip into your social media stuff. And I know you've spoken about this quite passionately and quite openly in terms of, social media is great for many positive things. And I love what you do is you bring that positivity to that medium, and everything you produce is always with that mindset. But you've done a couple of videos I've watched where you've reflected a little bit in terms of some of the negative sides of social media, and particularly as a lady commenting on sport.
Yeah.
Can you just give us a little bit of a flavor in terms of how you see that world now, and how you personally manage that when stuff's coming back at you that perhaps isn't quite so positive?
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is the more followers you get, the more hate you're going to get to go along with it, and that's true for anybody. But the ones that really get to me are the ones that they're only aiming at females. And I know a lot of other women that do other sort of sports content, and they get exactly the same. And it's so disheartening to see. And as much as about 99% of people on there are lovely and so positive and they make it worthwhile, there are some days where I'll just sort of scroll through some of my replies, and I turn my notifications off Twitter for the rest of the day, because they're either being mean about you talking about the sport, or like sometimes, as I said, when I would talk about Austin Matthews, they would assume that I didn't actually know what I was talking about. I just wanted to stare at Austin Matthews, which I hate to point out, but when you're watching hockey, you can't see what those guys look like. I can tell you what players in the NHL actually look like. And yet people still sort of think that's the main reason why women would watch sports, which just doesn't really even make sense. But it can be a mean place, social media, and I think it's important to take breaks from it and have a good balance with it, because it takes its toll scrolling down and scrolling down, and not everything's going to be positive, and you can't expect to be on the internet and not see mean things. But I think people need to remember, like, there are like human beings behind that screen that you're saying that to, and if you wouldn't say it to their face, you just shouldn't type it either. I mean, I had a couple of people last night who just I posted a selfie in a Leafs jersey, and then like the rest of the night was just kind of live tweeting the game, and some of the replies to it were just, they were a bit mean. They were a little bit mean. I blocked somebody, and I don't block people very often. I don't like to block people because I'm all for people having their say. But I did, on that post, turn the replies off, and I did block somebody on it, and that was just last night. Yeah, it's a rough world. Like, I can't complain, but it's tough.
Yeah, and is the content coming back to you because you posted a photo of you in your Leafs gear? Is it because they don't want to see that sort of stuff? Is it just because they've got, quite frankly, nothing better to do than upset people? Do you get a sort of feel for why some posts might generate more response than others?
Yeah, I think mainly the last one, because I don't know what people expect me to do. This is not my job. Like, this isn't my full-time job in any means. I have a job and I'm at uni, and someone had a go at me last night for posting that selfie, because I put that it was a tradition to post like a game day selfie, because
Yeah,
I've done it.
I saw your tweet. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that for years, and someone had a go at me because they said something about, oh well, I've been going since 1968 and I've never had to post selfies, and they just sent a few replies that were just kind of a bit mean, and I was just sort of sitting there thinking, why did you waste your time typing that out? Like, if you don't like my content, that's totally fine. Like, you don't have to follow me. I do not care. I really don't mind. But even sometimes just normal takes that I'll put up about hockey, like even not related to selfies or anything else, just normal takes, people will start sort of, you can feel them sort of trying to question your judgment on stuff a little bit. And I don't know if it's because there's a few factors. I don't know if it's because it's a woman saying it. I don't know if it's because I'm not from Canada or the States. And I have had people say to me before, Scottish people don't know anything about hockey, go watch football off. Like, I have had people say things along those lines. So there's a geographical thing, there's a gender thing, there's all that, but at the end of the day, it's very few and far between with people, and everybody else makes up for it so much because they're so nice and they're lovely human beings. And I'm not going to complain too much, because it's more than made up for with niceness, and it's a nice place to be. But it's a shame that a few people have to be mean to each other, because there's no need for it.
Yeah, it is the human nature, isn't it, generally? And it just, I think on social media, it gets birthed out in a way that we don't see, as you say, sort of that face-to-face confrontation, and people feel safe behind keyboards and phones to put stuff that they're not really accountable for. But it impacts people, and it impacts people like you, but it impacts people like me, you know, who are trying to put a positive spin into what can be quite a negative world. In terms of women's sport, women in sport, we seem to be in quite a good arena in the last few years, right across, you know, all different types of sport. Do you think that will start to change the dynamic in terms of, you know, for instance, you know, people like Alex Scott coming into Football Focus, and, you know, you're starting to see women in terms of the traditional British sports having a much more upfront public involvement. Do you feel that will change the culture of what we're seeing at the moment?
Yeah, I think it already has to an extent. I see women being taken a lot more seriously in the sports world now than even there was maybe a couple of years ago. So there's definitely progression. And anytime I see anything related to like a woman ending up in like a really good sports role, it makes me so happy. It makes me happy. It's good to see both women's sport in terms of athletes progressing, but it's also good just to see, even down to a fan level, it's good to see more women becoming fans. And I see it even at my local rink. There's more and more women I see going compared to what there was before, I think. And it's really nice to see. It's just nice to see more diversity in the sport. And yeah, hopefully it just keeps going that way and keeps getting better, but it's definitely getting better, and I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I think you're doing a great job. I really do, and I genuinely mean that. And I think it's great for young girls to have a bit of a role model, to see what you're cutting through in terms of your presence on social media. So keep doing what you're doing. It's fab. So it's really good to see. Let's just talk a bit about the Jays. Tell me how you. I mean, there's the obvious reason why you picked up on the Jays, because of the Leafs, but why this year did you start following them? Why hadn't that happened before? Was there a particular reason that you fell in love with the best sport? Let me just put that there.
You know what? I just really wanted a sport to watch through the summer, because I always miss the hockey during the summer. So I was sort of having a think, and baseball had always sort of caught my eye a little bit. I'm really into like the American sports. I like most sports, but I'm really into like American sports. And so there was just something about it that just seemed enjoyable to watch. And I had no clue what I was getting into. I had absolutely no idea. I still wouldn't say that my knowledge of baseball is at a level I'm happy with. It's not there yet at all. I knew absolutely nothing. And then one day I was just like, you know what? I think I'll pick up baseball this year. I think I'll pick that up. And so made sure I had the app. Then was delighted to find out how easy it is to watch baseball over here, because the blackouts aren't a thing over here until the postseason issue.
Don't go there.
We just had to take the postseason issues out. For the regular season, I was so happy how easy it was to watch the games. And I started watching it, didn't understand like the basic levels of it, but I didn't have a clue what was going on. And then I love looking at analytics, but I looked at them and they are a million times more complicated than hockey, but they're way more in depth and you get way more from them. But trying to understand them was a learning process. I have read a lot, watched a lot, and as I said, there's still a lot of things I'd like to brush up on. But I'm glad I decided to just randomly start watching it because it's been very enjoyable.
Great. Well, it's great to have you on board. We love meeting any Jays fans, and really this podcast and the Twitter handle that I run and the Facebook group and stuff really was all about trying to connect fans together. Obviously, it's still a minority sport here in the UK.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Jays fans, but compared to other sports, not that many. And so I wanted a means of trying to connect people together and sort of get that sense of community and, connection across the country. So it's been really cool to see you jumping into the Blue Jays family, and we love you there. You, in the same way you had a fascination with Mr. Matthews, Mr. Bichette seemed to go across your timeline, I noticed, on several occasions.
Yeah, you would be definitely correct there. I think most people thought I was going to go for Vladdy. I think most people thought it was Vladdy I was going to go for, who I do love, but Bichette, my favourite by a mile. He is my Matthews of the Jays. I love him.
Yeah. Any particular reason? I mean, was it the hair? Was it the looks? Was it actually the position he plays in? Was it what was the thing for you for both?
It was sort of a combination of all.
Because you can confess now, Victoria. It's right. Nobody's listening. It's okay. You can tell us the truth.
When I first started watching, I didn't understand all the different positions. Not going to lie, I was just sort of watching it, and I was like, okay, there's someone throwing a ball, there's someone hitting the ball. Okay, now there's people running about. Like that's all I could see at first. So it was probably like the way that he looked and like the sort of vibe he gave off. He just gave off a very, I don't know, like when I thought about baseball and my preconceptions of baseball, someone like him is probably what I pictured. So I don't know that, but his hair is amazing. Like his hair is incredible. It definitely draws you in. And then obviously he is an incredible player as well, right? So the more I understood the sport, the more I was fascinated by him actually playing as well. Him, and then Gosman would definitely be my sort of second as well. But yeah, I think a combination of all.
yeah. No, that's great. And it's the interesting thing with Bo and Vladdy and Kevin Biggio, which you probably picked up a little bit as you've watched over the year, is that they sort of came through the minor leagues together. That all their dads were former players as well, so you had this sort of amazing connection between them. And particularly Bo and Vladdy, Kevin perhaps slightly behind them, are really good players. And to bring up a whole crop of players all at the same time, that hasn't cost them any big bucks because they've drafted them through themselves. It was just an extraordinary story. And as we went through the pandemic year, is when they sort of came into the majors, and to see them grow together. And then as a team, I think, there's a bit of energy about the Jays at the moment. I mean, obviously there's the disappointment of what's happened this year, but we've got so many players that are under contract, so we're not going to lose the core. We're basically going to get the same sort of team back next year. A few changes here and there. How do you feel about sort of going from what you've seen this year into 2023? How do you feel they'll fare?
I'm excited. They're such a young team, right? So there's a lot still to come. I think when you've got a sort of aging team, you get a little bit concerned, or like, as you say, like when you don't have players under contract, you're concerned what's going to happen next. Whereas I think we're pretty secure for next season. There's a lot of potential that those guys still have that probably they haven't reached yet. So I'm very excited. I understand that that was a disappointment just there, but sometimes you have to look a little bit past that and look at, you know, if a couple of things had gone differently, everything there might have gone differently. And they're by no means a bad team in the slightest. There was just some turning points in that game, but I'm excited for what they can do. I think they're really enjoyable to watch and they're so fun.
Yeah. Have you watched any of the games, you know, in the more recent history? So 2015, 2016 seasons are particularly good years for the Jays. Again, they didn't get obviously all the way through to the World Series, but you probably heard about the bat flip game in 2015. If you ever get I don't know whether you've watched the whole thing, but certainly get to watch the 7th inning of that game 5. I think for me, it's the most extraordinary, tense moment in sport I've ever watched.
Yeah,
because so much happened in that. I think the inning, you know, for top and bottom of the inning, the whole thing was about 50 minutes long because there was just so many crazy things happening.
okay.
And for more recent fans, that's what they look back to, because obviously the bit like the Leafs, but not quite as far back as the Leafs. 92, 93 was the last time they won the World Series. So, you know, again, it's a sporting franchise in Toronto that desperately wants to get another title. And I think with this team, we should get it. I really do.
Yeah,
there's no question about that. What do you think about John Schneider, the manager? Obviously, he came in halfway through the season. Do you like what you've seen in terms of his strategy?
I mean, we've performed so well generally that I'm inclined to say yes, but obviously there were some judgments made, right, that are making me think no. But I don't feel like I've been in the sport long enough to really comment, to be honest, because I don't have enough of a comparison to use. So I don't like to make uneducated takes. I don't like to make sweeping statements that I don't feel like I know enough about. So I'm sort of mixed on the issue. I can see the good points, but I can also see the bad points. So I'm on the fence there, not gonna lie.
No, that's fair enough. I think a lot of people have come out and sort of said, well, you know, there was some, in hindsight, and because everybody's an expert in hindsight, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, he made the decisions at the time because he felt they were the right things to do. And I think if he'd had his time again, perhaps there may be a few tweaks here and there that they would have changed. I think, you know, particularly the Bow and Springer collision was that was a scary moment. That's like watching ice hockey.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was a big call, I think. Sorry,
I was saying, it was exactly like that, only far worse because there is way less equipment and protection there's in hockeys.
Yeah, it's crazy moment, and I think he would have perhaps considered taking George Springer off, who was already slightly hurt because he'd been hit on the hand and all that sort of stuff, and put Bradley Jr. in. I don't know. You know, we can all be experts, can't we, after the event? But I'm really excited about what's going to happen. Have you got any plans to do a summer trip? I mean, would you like to get across there and see a bit of baseball?
I would love that so much. I am devastated that I'm not going to see any baseball like in this trip anyway, but I would love to do a summer trip. That would be just amazing.
Or maybe the icing on the cake would be, because there's a bit of overlap between baseball and hockey around the Easter time. So, you know, Leafs doing well into the Stanley Cup perhaps, and the Jays have already kicked off. That could be like the perfect trip for you.
That would be the dream trip. That ticks all the boxes at once. That would just be ideal, you know? Yeah.
Great. One last question. Your choice of NFL team. I saw that you put that out a few weeks ago. Do you want to confess on that one?
Yeah, well, I picked the Giants, okay, because as I said earlier, New York has always been the place that I've been most fascinated by. As a child, my bedroom was New York themed, okay? So it's always kind of slightly perplexed me that I didn't pick a New York hockey team. I'm glad I didn't, but I'm still amazed that was my choice. So I felt like since there is no Canadian NFL team, I had to pick like my favorite city, like one of the places I want to visit the most, right? So that's kind of where that came from.
Okay.
It's weird. I've always watched the Super Bowl, but NFL, I've never watched all the season through. I've always been sort of a bandwagon or jump on the Super Bowl because the Super Bowl's always on or around my birthday, so it's always been trying to watch it. So yeah, that's my.
Have you ever seen any of the games down in London at all?
No, I haven't. I know there was one at the weekend just there. I should have probably tried to go, but everything is so chaotic right now that I don't know what I'm doing. So I'd love to have gone if I'd had the time.
Yeah, they're definitely worth going to, you know, because it does give you a feel for the game, you know, up close and personal, and makes you realise quite how many stops and starts there are in a game of NFL. It's just, you know, a lot of breaks, but it's a great atmosphere and definitely worth doing. I think we've done 3 games now, one at Wembley, or 2 at Wembley, 1 at Twickenham. I'd love to go to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I haven't been there, so that's a place I'd love to go and see that. So, Victoria, what's next for you in terms of what you're planning and doing beyond the trips to Toronto in a few weeks' time? What are you hoping to do with your channel and all that sort of stuff? Got any sort of plans for the next year or so?
I'm not completely sure, just because my timetable is filled up to the max. I'd like to just try and keep putting out as much content as I can, but I know there's going to be certain phases where it's going to have to take a little bit of a backseat, unfortunately. But I do a lot of work with the St Andrews Society of Toronto, and actually that's what my trip in November is based around. They have like an event that I'm going to, so I do a lot of for them, which is like Scottish Canadian heritage, so a lot more content for them. I work with Bodog as well. They like sponsor a lot of my videos, and they're great to work with. It's all like my own thoughts and stuff, like nothing I ever say is anything anyone's ever told me to say. It's all like my own thoughts, but a lot of content for sort of those, and yeah, hopefully try and do more like Leafs analysis videos, because I only started my channel in January, so we were already a good little bit into the season by then, so I'd like to do more analysis on the hockey, but my little bits of baseball content, even though I've probably made so many mistakes in baseball content that it's unbelievable. I don't because I was just trying to find my way so much, but I was probably making like the worst mistakes ever. I was probably saying all the wrong things, but it's important to learn, right? You can only
Totally. Have you got to the level where you fill in one of these yet? So scorecard for a baseball game. I don't know if you can see that.
No, I haven't.
So what you need to do, you need to get one of these sort of. This is one actually I picked up in the States last time. Yeah, the Dick's Sporting Goods score book. Load to score a game, because actually, funnily enough, when I learned how to do that, it made the game a lot more sense in terms of, you know, it can be a bit nerdy, to be quite frank, but I don't. You like all that? Okay, so that's fine then. I don't score every game by any means, but occasionally, if I'm not doing anything on the social stuff and I just actually want to sit down and just enjoy a game, I might just have the score pad next to me, because it just helps me sort of track the game as it goes along.
I like that. I'll need to do that.
Yeah. I'll send you some stuff with places you can learn how to score a baseball game. Now, I'm sure most people know where you are on your social stuff, but just for the sake of not missing anybody out, can you just give us your various handles and where people can find you and your content?
Okay, so my YouTube channel is just my name. It's just Victoria Stewart. My Twitter and my personal Instagram are both at Victoria Stewart, but the A in Stewart is crossed out with an X. It's not the easiest thing to say, but I've always had that at name. I've had it for years, so I'm stuck with it. And I also do history content as well on Instagram, and that's at History by Victoria. And finally, I make random TikToks, which are a load of nonsense, but they're usually sports related, and that is at Victoria Alice Stewart.
And I have to say, you have the neatest handwriting I've seen. So when you like post your "I'm studying here," and I was just like, man alive, look at that. It's like every letter, it's not even joined up. Every letter's written perfectly. I mean, how long does that take you to write out?
It takes me a while, but I definitely learn that way, and I've always loved writing stuff out. Everything, I'm such a neat freak with everything. Like everything has to be tidy. Writing, room, everything has to be immaculate. So
Yeah, I've noticed that about your bedroom, that, you know, when you're on your videos, is everything is perfectly symmetrical, beautifully placed. And I'm just looking at mine, I'm just like, oh, I'll throw the jerseys up and just, you know, try and make it look something like worth of a background, but yours is just pristine. So yeah, I had noticed about your writing. I was just thinking that is incredibly neat. So if you want to see some neat handwriting, you can follow Victoria.
Compliment. I love that as a compliment. It's always my favorite.
Great. Yeah, and nice little highlighting sections and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's all color coded. Good stuff. Like it, loving all that. Brilliant. Victoria, it's been so cool to catch up with you. I really thank you for your time tonight. As I say, perfect segue from coming out of the days of summer into the days of winter, and your boys are back in action, and we look forward to, you know, catching up with you again soon, and perhaps as the baseball season comes around, we can do another session with you, and you know, help you in your baseball knowledge as you help us in your hockey knowledge. That would be cool.
Thank you so much for having me.
Been an absolute pleasure. We shall catch up soon, guys. That's it. That's the end of the run for season 1 here on Red, White and Blue Jays. Have a great off season. We will be doing one more of our live pods on Monday. So we're going to be just doing our sort of final end of season breakdown. And then if there's any sort of news that comes out of the Jays over the winter, we might do a few ad hoc sessions, but our live show will go out again as we get into spring training. So look forward to that in 2023. Other than that, have a great winter. Look after yourselves, and we'll see you soon.
The Red, White and Blue Jays podcast is a production of Blue Jays Fans UK. If you've got a Blue Jays story to share, let us know. Email us at bluejaysfansuk@gmail.com and follow along on Twitter and Instagram at Blue Jays Fans UK. I'm your announcer, Jim Langton. Thanks for listening.